All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Just 11 weeks after suffering a torn Achilles, New York Jets quarterback Aaron Rodgers has been cleared to practice. Now, this is more like a tale out of Ripley's Believe It or Not, as Rodgers is looking to defy the odds as he is attempting to return to action so quickly. But why? All right, Rodgers has been cleared to practice, but the Jets still have some time to make a decision, roughly 3 weeks, as far as whether or not, Rodgers is going to play this year. But at the end of the day, let's be realistic. The New York Jets are 4-7. The New York Jets have a long shot at best as far as making the postseason this year. So why risk it? I mean, to me, this smells of several things. This is my opinion here, of course. Woody Johnson being Woody Johnson, and the Jets team owner, has been known to have his finger on the pulse of this team at times. He's been known to kind of push the envelope on things, and this just smells of that, in my opinion. GM Joe Douglas and head coach Robert Sala possibly worrying about their jobs. That could be out there as well. And the New York Jets just simply allowing Aaron Rodgers to do what he wants to do. But if that's going to be the case, at some point here, there needs to be an adult in the room who is going to go out there and protect Aaron Rodgers from himself. We're talking about a quarterback who's going to be 40 years of age on Saturday, coming back from an Achilles injury. Honestly, Rodgers is just going through the motions right now, non contact drills for the Jets and stuff like that. But how is his body going to respond to the rigors of the game? Can he run properly? Can he cut? And that's going to be the most important thing when you come back from an injury as severe as this Achilles injury is. You got to be able to do the little things. You got to be able to do those agility drills. You got to be able to trust your body again. That's a hard ask, especially for somebody who is the age of Rodgers. Then let's be real about this. The Jets' offensive line was not good when Aaron Rodgers was healthy, and guess what? They haven't gotten any better. They've actually looked like they've gotten worse. Not only that, you're dealing with the cold of the New York, New Jersey area this time of the year as we're set to go into the month of December. That unforgiving turf at MetLife Stadium, which has taken down a lot of players, maybe not a lot, but a good amount of players over the last couple of years, whether it be ACL or Achilles injuries. Most recently, Jalen Phillips, the edge rusher from the Miami Dolphins, suffered a season ending Achilles injury on the turf at MetLife Stadium on Black Friday. So, when it's all said and done, why risk it? And for me, Aaron Rodgers and the Jets just need to simply go out there and just cut their losses and start focusing on 2024. Because I could see if we had a situation where, as opposed to being 4-7, the Jets are 7-4, and they have a realistic shot to do some damage in the postseason. Okay. And honestly, so far this season, we've seen flashes of what the Jets can be because even after last season, a lot of us said, well, if the Jets just had themselves a quarterback, this team could do some damage. Why? Because the running ability of Brees Hall, and then they have a defense. And not only do they have a defense, they have a defense that travels. And we've seen, the Jets be a problem for some contenders this year, most notably the Kansas City Chiefs earlier this season, and then the Philadelphia Eagles. The Jets beat them with Zach Wilson as their starting quarterback. So my point is like, okay, if you're 7-4, fine, go ahead and try to maybe push the envelope. But at this point, you're 4-7. The Jets ain't going nowhere. And honestly, looking at their schedule, they'll be lucky, to not lose at least 10 games. So again, why risk it? When I see Aaron Rodgers attempting to come back so quickly from this injury, I think about the Jerry Rice factor. And the reason why I say that, you go back to the 1997 NFL season, first week of that season. Uh, Bucks are playing the 49ers. This is when the Bucks are trying to be on a come up and make a name for themselves. 49ers ran a reverse play at the old sombrero down in Tampa. Warren Sapp horse collar tackled Jerry Rice, which was legal in those days. And Jerry Rice suffered a torn ACL injury. Of course, that's a season ender. Jerry Rice, being the freak of nature and workaholic that he is, he worked hard to rehab and come back that season. And he did come back later that season, played on in a Monday night game for the 49ers at home against the Denver Broncos, re-injured the knee, and that was it for him for the season. And then we didn't see him again until week number one of the 98 season. So honestly, at the end of the day, if you're the Jets, why risk it? Because it doesn't make sense. Because for me, obviously injuries are a part of the game. And you can never predict when an injury is going to happen. But again, we still got to be realistic. A lot of what Aaron Rodgers does as a quarterback comes down to his mobility, his scrambling ability. How is he going to be able to trust his body, cut, plant, and be able to put the force and the power behind his throws, especially the deep throws, like we've been accustomed to? It ain't worth it. It's not worth this roll of the dice here. Chelsea Grin, what's going on? You're saying I'm pretty sure that the Jets get their first rounder back since Aaron Rodgers is out. If so, shouldn't they let him play and go for if so, they shouldn't let him play and go offensive line in the first. But I think it's kind of obvious. Oh, definitely. I mean, the thing was, it was like we knew coming into the season that the Jets had to get O line help. And I think back to this past spring's draft when everybody expected the Jets to take a lineman. And then Bill Belichick, being Bill Belichick, what does he do? Because the Patriots were picking ahead of the Jets. He let the Pittsburgh Steelers move up in front of the Jets and take the offensive lineman that the Jets more than likely were going to take. So the Jets ended up going and getting Will McDonald, a situational pass rusher who could work for this team. But nonetheless, they got so many holes on that offensive line. And then you're asking them to go out there and protect the quarterback who's coming back from an Achilles injury. And like I said before, the Jets' offensive line wasn't good when the season started, and they've gotten worse. And now you're going to ask Aaron Rodgers possibly to go play behind that team when you got behind that line when you got nothing to play for? Absolutely not. Yeah, listen, it was a conditional pick. Obviously, if Aaron Rodgers played 75% of the snaps for the Jets, that was going to turn into a first rounder for the Green Bay Packers. Clearly, at this point, not. So you got to go out there and work on your offensive line. I would just say, you know what? Aaron Rodgers being back, obviously, he was always in the building because aside from, a very slim chance of him being healthy enough to come back, the thought process was, you know what? Let's have Aaron Rodgers tutor and mentor Zach Wilson. Nobody could have predicted what was going to happen in week number one against Buffalo when Aaron Rodgers suffered that Achilles injury because the Jets were not prepared for Zach Wilson to be their starting quarterback this season. Zach Wilson wasn't prepared to be the Jets starting quarterback this season. And of course, you have these people out here that for whatever reason, they expected different results of Zach Wilson this season. Zach Wilson is the same guy this season that he has been for his entire NFL career. So why did you mysteriously think all of a sudden that he was going to be something that he's not? I understand the frustration with the Jet fans. I understand the frustration with the media in the New York area. But at the end of the day, you had a championship defense for the second consecutive year. But everything that the Jets did revolved around Aaron Rodgers. And the proof is in the pudding. They're 4-7. The Jets have benched Zach Wilson. And honestly, Robert Saleh didn't want to, but he didn't have a choice because the Jets have three consecutive home games. They had Miami last week. They got Atlanta this coming Sunday. And between the media and the fans, the Jets could not afford to have Zach Wilson go out there again this season. But even with that said, they can't afford to risk having Aaron Rodgers go out there at this point of the season as well. I mean, let's just go out there and sake of argument. Let's say the Jets do let Aaron Rodgers play. They go 7-10, clearly not good enough to be in the playoffs in the AFC. Then on top of that, let's say Aaron Rodgers goes out there and re-injures the Achilles. Was it worth it? Absolutely not. Now, with that said, there's nothing saying that Aaron Rodgers can't come back and get hurt again next year and be healthy right now, obviously, because again, we can't predict injuries. But again, Achilles injuries, ACL injuries, I think those more than others, and neck injuries as well, you got to really approach it with kid gloves. And in this situation, when you have invested so much into this man as far as what you're hoping that he can do and bring to your franchise, it ain't worth it. This is not a situation where, you can play with a broken finger and tape it up to another finger, or, you can have a fracture in your arm and put on a bubble cast, or, I always think about, going back, Chelsea Grin, I'm not sure if you're old enough to remember when Dan Pastorini was his quarterback for the Houston Oilers, and of course, that's when the flap jacket was, invented. When he had cracked ribs. So that's something totally different. But we're talking about an Achilles, and like the ACL joints in your knees. You got to be very, very careful how you approach these things. So I'm just looking at it right now, and this could be another one of those Jets being the Jets moments. And we've seen so many. We've seen so many this year. I mean, what other team could make a trade for a Hall of Fame quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, and then 3 plays into the season, he suffers that Achilles injury? You think back to last Friday, the fail Mary, if you will, at MetLife Stadium. I mean, I've never, and I'm sure other people can say that as well. I have never seen that before. When one team attempts a hail Mary, the opposing team, in this case being Miami, catches a ball at the 1 yard line and runs it back for a touchdown. You think about so many situations with the Jets, the butt fumble about 10 years ago with Mark Sanchez, the fake spike by Dan Marino nearly 30 years ago, and we could go on and on and on and on and on. Uh, but it's just like, it's just one of those things, man. So for me with the Jets, I just look at it like this: somebody has to be the adult in the room. Somebody's got to sit up there and make a viable decision about this. And like I said, somebody's got to protect Aaron Rodgers from himself. And Chelsea Grin, listen, I got to give you a shout out and show you some love, because anytime somebody can mention the great Earl Campbell, who was one of the best ball carriers in NFL history, you know what? You're a-okay in my book. So, but the question for me is, will or should Aaron Rodgers play? Now, the should part, I'm definitely going to say absolutely not, for so many reasons. The Jets don't have anything to play for. You're playing on a bad surface at MetLife Stadium. You're playing in the cold weather in the Northeast. And I know A-Rod has spent his entire NFL career playing in cold weather, most notably Green Bay. And I mean, we could all make a legit case to say, hey, December and January in Green Bay is a lot different than New York. It gets cold in New York, but New York cold and Green Bay cold are two different things. But with that said, trying to, keep, those ligaments warm, loose, fresh, it's a real hard ask. And at the end of the day, if you're coming back to a 4-7 ball club, is it really worth it? Absolutely not. Now, will Aaron Rodgers play? That's a different story, because it's one of those where I'm not sure if the Jets have somebody within that organization that's going to put their foot down to Aaron Rodgers, because let's not forget, last year that Jets contingency that got on a plane and went to California to visit him to try to get this deal hammered out for him to come to the Jets. It was Woody Johnson, it was Joe Douglas, and it was Robert Sala. And again, a lot that they have invested is attached to Aaron Rodgers. I know that there are some people who are going to say, well, maybe the Jets should move on from Robert Sala. Still a darn good defensive coach, but he turned his reins of his offense over to obviously Nathaniel Hackett, and Aaron Rodgers, buddy, if you want to call him that, as the offensive coordinator. And, Joe Douglas, to me, I think he's attached at the hip with Robert Sala at this point. So I'm not sure if they're going to be the ones to sit up there and say, hey, You can't do this. You're too valuable for us. Save it for next season. I know I talk about baseball on here, a lot, but it's just like a pitch count in baseball. It's just like when we've seen more and more in the current state of Major League Baseball where pitchers are married to the pitch counts. You don't let pitchers, go 300 innings consistently like they did once upon a time. I think something like that needs to be here for Aaron Rodgers. You got to protect him from himself. There's absolutely nothing to gain here, and honestly, for the Jets, you have everything to lose because what could more than likely happen? He re-injures the Achilles, and we're right back to square one. Whereas we should be, you know, in the middle of the rehab scenario where by the time we get to the spring, Aaron Rodgers is fresh. He's ready to go. He's gotten a clean bill of health. And now you have some optimism to look forward to for 2024. You have your first round pick in the upcoming NFL draft. You're going to have the potential to sign a free agent or two to try to shore things up on that offense. So at the end of the day, why risk it? This is a very tricky situation. This is a very wild situation. Aaron Rodgers ain't Benjamin Button, okay? And at the end of the day, Father Time is undefeated. And coming back from this injury is tough enough for a 25-year-old. Now you're asking a 40-year-old to do it. I wouldn't roll the dice if I'm the Jets. I darn sure wouldn't roll the dice if I'm Aaron Rodgers. So we just got to sit back and wait and see what happens. But at the end of the day, in my gut, I still got a feeling that the Jets are going to be the Jets. And if the Jets are going to be the Jets, well, you know what? Why should we even be surprised at this point? But, folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you have not already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it'll be my pleasure to follow you right back. If you are on Facebook, you can check me out on the Sports Depot. Sports Depot is 365, rather, one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. Please feel free to check it out. If you like what you heard and saw tonight, as always, hit that like and subscribe buttons. Chelsea Grin, as always, it was a pleasure. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the comments. And I'm sure from a football perspective, we've got plenty to talk about for the upcoming weekend. Conference championship weekend in the world of college football. I don't know how much you follow, but definitely check it out. And also, we got plenty to talk about on the NFL front. And then things are heating up on the hot stove for baseball as there have been some signings going around. So definitely, you know, you know, keep an eye out for me. And yeah, I'm looking at your last comment there. It is sad, and I've talked about it, and I've been a proponent of it for the longest time. The Pac-12 breaking up absolutely sucks, and there are some other words that I want to add to that, but it absolutely sucks, and I think it sucks, especially since we got a top five matchup in Vegas this Friday night for the championship, and it did not have to end this way. And it is bad, bad, bad to the bone. Okay. But, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Thanks once again for all of your support. Keep on checking me out. Like I said, hit those like and subscribe buttons to get the alerts for when I'm coming up with something new. The support always matters. And I appreciate the support. I definitely appreciate the love. Not trying to sound like a broken record, but it's genuine. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin. I'm signing off and saying thanks once again for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. Be well, everybody.